Hey guys, my name is Steve Reichert. I am a photographer and filmmaker, mostly documentary and adventure stuff. That's what I like to shoot. And this is my amateur hour live stream. And every week around 8 p.m. or so Eastern Time, I like to come on here and chat with you guys that are in my audience, in my community, and talk a little bit about storytelling, photography, video, basically all the stuff that we can do with a camera. And not so much dissecting it from a profit standpoint, commercial work, but more from a standpoint of just the joy of storytelling and being out there with the camera and enriching our own lives through photography and video and storytelling. And that's what I like to do every week, every Friday, and I try to get on at 8 p.m. or so, although I have a little daughter, 3-year-old, who's actually sleeping in the other room, and if everything goes to plan, she will stay in her bed and stay asleep, and you won't necessarily meet her in this video, but depending on her schedule, her bedtime, that dictates a little bit of what I'm able to do and when I'm able to get on the air. So typically what I do on these live streams, I like to bring a topic to discuss a little bit, and then at any point in time, everything is open. I'm happy to take questions, to kick around ideas, to talk about literally anything that you guys want to talk about. It can be stuff from my videos, questions that you guys have about cameras, and we can argue about stuff too. I've picked up a few trolls over the last, maybe trolls isn't the right word, maybe haters is a better term. So yeah, I'm happy to entertain any kind of conversation here, even roughly related to the wonderful world of storytelling. Last week, I mentioned that I am giving away a Panasonic G7, and that is going to happen on Tuesday. I'm going to, at least the contest properly is going to begin next Tuesday, and we'll start, seeing about getting that G7 sent off to a good home, which I'm excited about. Hey, King Yuzi, good to have you here. I was wondering when you'd check in. One of the regulars, good to have you here. And so anyways, that's pretty much what I have coming up for the next couple of weeks. I have a video that I want to do about lens selection for the X-T2 and lens selection for the GH5, the lenses that I've used and that I like, and just some thoughts about that. Yeah, well, I'm glad you're awake for this one, King Yuzi. I would not ever begrudge somebody the opportunity to get a little sleep, and I know it's later where you are over there on the other side of the pond, so that's all good. And then I still have a handful of documentary projects of my own that I shot, and just some videos that I want to put out that are less in the vlog category and more just in terms of like my own work that I want to put out here and share with you guys. So I have a decent amount of stuff to do for the remainder of the summer, and I'm always enjoying these live streams because this gives me an opportunity to just chat and kick around stuff and kind of talk a little bit about what I've been working with and noticing, and kind of where my work is at. And so I don't really have a specific dissertation or topic that I'm like bringing to you guys tonight, other than I just wanted to kind of give you guys a recap. This is the amateur hour, and it's sort of a self-deprecating, tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that I have recently, officially, as far as my YouTube channel goes, like given up professional photography. I've made a choice to change careers and go out of that, and that was something that I was working on for the last 6 years, give or take, and ironically, I've made, how many videos do I have on this channel? I have a bunch of videos on this channel, and I have managed to put a lot of time into creating videos. I have 190 at this point, and the video where I talk about quitting is the video that winds up blowing up, and then everything, that's where everything kind of goes. So that's been kind of interesting. That's been directing a lot of my, kind of what I've had going on the last week. I've had so many comments come in, and I've been really excited too because I've had a lot of new subscribers come to the channel, and now we are closing in on 5,000, which for me is a lot. It's been a while since I've, since I started this channel, and it was really only in the last year that I've started putting effort into growing my YouTube channel and really putting work into it. And so it's kind of ironic that the channel has really started to pick up and grow because of my decision to leave professional photography. And it's kind of interesting, like, I've had some people who are, there you go, I'm a professional YouTuber now. Well, technically, yeah, I suppose that really is what I am at this point until I can become professional in nursing, which is ultimately where I'm planning on going with my career at this point. Although, so after all this back and forth about quitting professional photography, I actually had a client approach me potentially to do some work. So it's not set in stone, but they have a project that they're working on, and it's not strictly photography. It's like, you could call it like content creation and social media management. So it's photography is involved in it, but it's also social media and perhaps some YouTube stuff. So I might wind up getting sucked back into it, at least for the time being, and that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. It was interesting because a lot of people, I felt like, really, really appreciated hearing the negative side. Not the negative side of it, because it's not like in any of my videos I'm talking about how professional photography was bad or how I hated it at all. Like, that wasn't anything that I talked about, and I've done 2 videos, and I have like 2 more. So those of you who may be tired of hearing about this stuff, I'm sorry. But my goal is really to dissect the experience so that I and you guys and anybody who's interested can understand, like, what was it that I could have done better. At this point, hindsight is 2020. I know some of the things I could have done better, and I don't feel like I have the time or the energy at this point, having invested 6 years, to go back and start over and try to, recapture those mistakes. Or do a better job there. But I'm very happy to share my experience with other people, and what I have found is that there seem to be a lot of other people who either have gone through the same process, or people who are getting into photography and are hoping to avoid going through this process and kind of being spit out the other end of the meat grinder, so to speak. And I'm lucky, I'm very fortunate, because number one, I have a family that has given me the support to do this. And I told my wife the other day, I was like, I just want to thank you again, because there are so many people, so many comments that I've gotten from people whose spouses or significant other has kind of said, no, you know what, like, get a real job, grow up, just come on, like, be serious, would you? And my wife has, given me the freedom to pursue this to the point where I have finished my course and said, okay, I've done the best that I can. I'm happy with the effort that I put in, and I'm ready to move elsewhere. And that's a huge privilege. That's a gift, and that's not something that I take lightly. And the other thing is that I got a chance to try. I got a chance to learn a huge amount, and I wasn't completely unsuccessful from a financial standpoint. I didn't go broke. I had worked with some great clients. I did some, some in the pharmaceutical industry, some in the, big clients like Duracell, Procter & Gamble, Roche Diagnostics, Baxter Pharmaceuticals, and some outdoor focused brands like 510 and Cliff Bar. And ultimately I would have liked to see things turn out differently, or I think I would have, but I've been very fortunate to make this decision and have this change of mind, I guess, at a point where I haven't gotten burnt out. And I've definitely heard from people in the comments who are like, yeah, I did this for, when I was, 6 years into it, I felt the way that you did, and then I kept going. But and other people did not have the luxury of kind of pulling the pin and making this decision, or maybe felt compelled to stick with it or had too much money invested or what have you, but they kept going beyond the point that they were really comfortable investing more into it as a profession, and then they wound up hating it and feeling like it really was taking and stealing from their life, and instead of photography being something that you love and that you get into because your heart's in it. I mean, who gets into photography because it's a great way to make a whole bunch of money? I mean, maybe there are some people who do, or like, but I feel like most people who get into photography get into it because they genuinely love it and they want to turn that passion into income. And if you have to choose one or the other, I'm thankful to have the ability to kind of pull the ripcord before I start hating photography. And you may have seen the video that I did recently, actually just yesterday. I published it, the Panasonic GH5 versus the Fuji X-T2 for shooting a wedding. It was kind of a little informal vlog that I shot around my helping as a second shooter shoot my wife's cousin's wedding. And I was, I had much lower responsibility. I was a low man on the totem pole, so I just kind of knew these are the times when I'm on the clock, and then the rest of the time I can just run around with my camera and play. And so I spent the majority of the wedding kind of shooting back and forth between the XT2 and the GH5, because I'm not a wedding photographer, and so obviously I don't have to choose which one of these cameras is going to be the right camera for professional wedding photography, and frankly, I don't think I would choose either of them as my A camera for wedding photography, but it is an interesting chance to kind of dabble and step into that world. And I can tell you that I can understand how for some people that shooting weddings would be just really, really a quick path to burnout. And I think for me, shooting weddings professionally would be a quick path to burnout. I mean, even working with a couple that I knew and that I love and that have always actually been very supportive of my work. I don't think, Alyssa, that you're watching YouTube, but like from my first projects when I first got started, like my wife's cousin Alyssa, she's always been like super good friend, super supportive, and even working with people that you're close to, it's kind of crazy. So I could see how getting out is getting out at the right time is really important. I missed a couple of comments there. JR1434 said, I would hope most spouses are supportive versus destructive. Perhaps they are not meant to last. Best of luck to you. Thank you, JR. I know for me, we could have a whole episode on relationships. That's a whole nother ball of wax for sure. And I've been through some stuff in my relationship, and I've also put my wife through some stuff in relationships, the way that they are. Yes, weddings are definitely, they are very stressful. Like honestly, shooting weddings would be the type of thing where I would financially, I'd be like, I hope I get the gig, but like personally, I would be like, I hope they bail, hope it rains, I hope they cancel, hope somebody stands them up at the altar so I don't have to go and do that. Not really, but that's a good signal that probably isn't a good fit for me to be shooting weddings, right? But yeah, like in terms of spousal issues with income, like the main thing that spouses divorce over and fight over is usually income and financial issues. And like when you have a career that worked for you at one point because you didn't have a family, you had fewer responsibilities, the economy was better, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, the Jones down the street, they're doing IT, or they're in medical field, or they're in some other consistent line of 9-to-5 work, and they're able to pay their mortgage, and we're having to move in with somebody's parents because you got a job that is kind of a dream job but not really fulfilling the financial needs. Then yeah, things get rough pretty quickly. And again, I've been fortunate that while it definitely has put strain on my marriage and has definitely contributed to some problems, it's also not to that level where my wife has really gone out of her way to be as supportive as she possibly can. I mean, there are some things that it's just like, yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's stressful on me, and by extension it's going to be stressful on her too. And that's part of the reason why I made the decision to say, yeah, I just want to look elsewhere for my income. And King Yuzi said, photography and video is supplementary income for me at the moment. Working full-time makes the creative stuff more enjoyable for me. And I'm right there with you. You know, that is really my goal in doing this. You know, I had a lot of people leave very nice comments saying, oh, please, you know, I just found your channel through this video. It sucks that you're quitting photography. And I'm like, no, hold on, I'm not quitting photography. I'm redefining my relationship with photography because I want to maintain that relationship for a long time. I don't want something, and I've had a bad habit of taking things that I love and turning them into jobs and then regretting it later, because then I, you know, go through a long drought or a period of time, like when I was guiding climbing. You know, I was out in the Southwest in Zion National Park, one of the most spectacular, actually the cover photo for all of my live streams is the background cover photo is a picture of the Watchman in Zion National Park. That's like the quintessential picture, which ironically I took with a little point and shoot. There's like all these other photographers lined up with their, you know, full frame DSLRs and their big lenses and their tripods at sunset, like right next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, to get that picture. I had the Sony RX100 Mark IV, a little pocket camera, just like, bloop, took my picture and off I went. And it's one of my favorite pictures. It's representative of, you know, a lot of things about photography that are special to me. And but in the time that I was living and working out there, I was working as a climbing guide, and I was like, oh, you know, climbing, that what better way to be outside all the time, be active and do all this fun stuff, like that's the way to go, right? And as it turns out, you know, I think I may have told this story once before, but I actually was guiding a canyoneering trip in Utah, and my client for the day he wasn't the CEO of Zappos, which is headquartered in Las Vegas. He was high up in the food chain, like one of the top guys at Zappos. So he was very well off. And I remember him being like, oh man, I'm so jealous. You get to come out here every day and you get to do this. And I'm like thinking to myself, dude, I'm making 18 grand a year taking people who make like 5 times as much, you know, out to kind of do the same thing over and over again. Zappos is a shoe distributor, like a shoe retailer, mostly online stuff. They're really popular in the US. They're kind of like the Amazon of shoes, I guess you could say. Like, I used to buy a lot of shoes from them. They have a really good return policy, awesome customer service, really good selection, and like kind of got the whole online shoe shopping craze going. Rika says, I'm very tall today. You know, it's funny that you say that because I had to position things a little bit differently, and so the angle of the phone is different for this live stream. So ironically, I'm kind of slouching down in my chair a little bit more just to get in frame. But nice to see you here, Rika. So yeah, like I've had a bad habit of making careers out of things that I love, and it's not always a good idea. And like during the time that I was working as a climbing guide, like all my friends would be like, "Hey, let's go climbing," and I'd be like, "It's the weekend. I'm gonna go inside, watch The Simpsons, draw the shades, blast the air conditioner because it would be like 104 out every single day, and just be like, you know, the hell with that. I'm not going climbing. Like I could spend all week climbing, like for my work. I don't want to go out and do that in my free time." So, and it took me probably 2-3 years or so to really get past that, and then you know, I wound up doing the 365-day climbing project where I climbed every single day for a year, and that was more self-driven, but it was probably another year or two after that where it took me to get back to the point where I was actually excited about climbing again. So you got to be really careful to maintain that balance. It's a hard thing to do, and you don't really think about how dangerous it is and how much your life is going to be impacted negatively if the thing that you look forward to, the thing that keeps you motivated, the thing that, like, you know, you're looking at posts on Reddit and you're shopping for gear on Amazon and like put in a lot of time to like camera stuff, and you know, if you kill your love for that thing, I mean, it's just really it's sad, you know. And so I'm glad that I've had the chance to kind of again redefine my perspective with it, not quit photography, and I'm not even close to making money from that stuff. Like King Yuzi said, totally open to spider phone. You know, I had one of those spider phone stands, and maybe it wasn't, it was a Gorilla Pod, but it was a stand for the phone, and I forget how it broke. I want to say my daughter broke it, but I could be just misremembering and blaming her for my own error. And but I need to get another one. So now what I have is the phone is set up on my laptop screen. So like my laptop is open facing me, and I just have the phone in the crease on the laptop, and then I have the monitor providing a little fill light, because I know the lighting in this, you know, the soundproofing in here is really good. And I had to move my mic closer to me, so I turned the gain down, so hopefully my audio isn't clipping, and if it is, I would hope after 20 minutes that one of you kind people would tell me. But hopefully it sounds alright. The sound in this room is awesome because of all the clothes and stuff. It's like sound treated, but the lighting, just some track lighting, is not good. So it's different from a Gorilla Pod. I will look into that. I will definitely look into that. Thank you, Rika. I'm happy to hear that the audio is at least good. So yeah, it would definitely help. I mean, the amount of space that I have in here, or I should say the amount of space that I don't have in here, is incredible. I'm literally like almost back against the wall on a closet, and then like the end of the desk is like right at the microphone, where the microphone is, and I moved some stuff out of here the other day, so anyways, yeah, my studio space is definitely something that is a bit lacking here, and that's something that I'm hoping to improve in the you know, as I address my dire professional situation and find my way into you know, a different place to live. Hopefully that I'll be able to actually have some space to devote to better you know, studio stuff. But as I was saying, I'm open, totally open to really, and I'm putting the hammer down more so on my YouTube channel. I'm really trying to make consistent content every week, twice a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and of course Fridays for the live stream. And you know, the Panasonic G7 giveaway, you know, that's something that's not necessarily meant as a, you know, an avenue to build the channel, which if it does, that'll be great. But honestly, that part of things, I just wanted to give that away because selling it on eBay is such a pain. And since it's an older camera, whoever on eBay is going to be like, I'll give you $50 for it, you know, and you have to deal with those kind of jokers. And like, I don't want to do that. It's still a good camera, which has been very lightly used. I haven't used the G7 that much because I wound up getting the XT10 and kind of getting into the Fuji stuff, and then the XT2, and then the GH5. So, you know, I would much rather see that camera go to somebody who can really use it. And shared studio space, like 4 or 5 people paying together, I have not, primarily because I just don't know anyone else, you know, in my area, and I especially don't know anybody else in my area that is interested in YouTube stuff. And frankly, you know, in a perfect world, my hope is to start doing more content that, you know, that is not in studio space as such, but that is more like vlog, live type of content that's out there in the field, climbing and traveling and stuff like that, as I am able to free up time and resources to get back into that. It's just that one of the things that's happened this summer is like so many things have happened where I just need to sit down and talk and explain what's going on in the video, that's kind of taken up a lot of the content plan for this summer. And so, you know, I haven't been out climbing. I've been, and also financially, I'm not really able to, I'm not really able to do a whole bunch of traveling. I may have one climbing trip this summer and of course when I go out there, I'll vlog that and post all that stuff up and stuff too. So Rika asked if I had any tips on the GoPro Hero 5 and a Karma stick. I'm not sure what types of tips I could give. I have done a little bit with the GoPro Hero. I think I had the Hero 4 Black. And GoPro Heroes are is the very first video camera that I got, and some people love them and do great stuff with them. For me, I have always struggled a lot to use the GoPro Heroes, and I've tried. I've had the 2, the 1, the 2, the 3, or no, not the 1 and the 2, and then the 4. And I've tried really hard to love the GoPros, but for me, it's just not a good fit. I wish I had better tips or better advice to give about the GoPro Heroes. Other than I would say there's a couple things. You could definitely get an external microphone adapter, like, you know, you get the skeleton housing that has the ability to put a. I'm trying to see if I have, yeah, this little microphone here. That I was able to mount this little stubby, is a Nikon ME1, little stubby shotgun microphone, and the audio is really the big Achilles heel. There are many Achilles heels with the GoPros, and I'm not trying to like crush your dreams. I'm telling you why they're not a good fit for me and the things that typically can be problematic with them, so just bear that in mind. The audio is by far the biggest limitation, at least. Again, I haven't used the 5, so up till the 4 that I know of, the audio is pretty bad. But if you can get an external microphone and you get a housing, there's a they make housings that you can get from China that have like a little cold shoe mount on top, and you can put a microphone, a little stubby microphone, which this is really tiny, mount that on top, and then put the external mic in. And then that improves your audio by a huge margin. Red Anks, it sounds like you have more experience with this than I do. You broke the screen on your Hero 5 because the wrong SD card, and you are going back to get a new one. That's very loyal and bold of you, I will say. Sennheiser has a very good waterproof external mic for it. Very interesting. I did not know that. I would be curious to know what the price is on that, because I know Sennheiser does not typically make cheap stuff. King Yuzi says GoPros are not main cameras unless it's for sports or action shots. I would agree. You know, for higher level production stuff, definitely for vlogging. The GoPro cameras do create a very immersive feel with the wide-angle lens. Use the GoPro Studio or whatever it is, there's software that comes with the camera, because that gives you the ability to improve things, and it's an added step, but you can reduce the fisheye and you can mess with the footage a little bit and do interesting things. I mean, what the GoPros are able to do, I like. It's just the form factor of the GoPro just is, I don't like the form factor of the GoPro at all, and it makes it very difficult. If you can overcome the audio, though, it can make a really nice vlogging camera, because it is so wide angle. You can capture so much stuff. You can shoot RAW, you can shoot in 4K, and there's a whole bunch of different modes. Take the time, learn how to navigate through the menu and get all that stuff nailed down. But you have to definitely adapt to the form factor in order for it to be right. So I don't know if those are tips that, you know, give you any benefit with the GoPro. Again, there are certain things that King Yuzi says the phones are better. Any advice on practicing camera work? Yeah, that I could probably give you some. That's a context I can work with a little bit. What I would say is, like, make little stories. Shoot little stories about just the most mundane things, like, this is the story of me making coffee, or this is the story of me going to the grocery store, or this is the story of me, you know, brushing my teeth in the morning. And think about the different shots that you could put into that. And if you notice a lot of other vloggers, I'm assuming that you're asking this from a vlogging standpoint, or at least vlog type of content that is somewhat informal, but you want it to look good, you know, look at the number of shots, the number of different angles and perspectives that are put into any, you know, I mean, and it sounds reductionist or overly simplistic to say it this way, but what I always like to do is, number one, strive to get a variety of different shots to tell a simple story. A simple story that has a definite start and end that you can control and that you know. And see how interesting you can make it look. I mean, I've seen some video. I watched a tampon commercial actually yesterday on Reddit. Brushing my teeth will be 3 hours of editing. Well, that's part of the challenge, frankly, is, you know, figuring out how to get the shots ahead of time so that you can cut that time down. So make a video of you doing the same thing, make several of those videos, and get it down, to whittle it down to where, like, leave yourself a finite amount of time to shoot and edit and see how good you can make it in that time. So instead of saying I'm going to take 10 hours to edit this, say I'm going to get it as best I can within an hour and a half of editing. And then shoot it again the next day and edit it again, maybe not the next day, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like, right? Like on a training schedule, give yourself a little bit of a break in there, but do it multiple times and then see how good you can get it, how quickly. And that is one of the big benefits of daily vlogging, is that you start off like really struggling to get even like halfway decent stuff, and before you know it, you get used to shooting and editing so much that, like, as you're shooting, you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to cut it here. I need this shot. I'm going to go over there. And you do more of your stuff in camera. Then you get into the edit. You already know what you have because you're thinking of these shots beforehand, and everything flows much more rapidly and smoothly. And so really there is no better way to get good at storytelling and editing than by telling a bunch of stories and editing and being prepared for the fact that it's going to suck. And that's totally okay. That's important that you make stuff that sucks, because when you see it and you're like, this sucks, then you have a chance to look at it and say, now, why does this suck? Looking at this compared to something else that I see that I think is good, what's the difference? What do they do? And, you know, and sometimes you'll see that it's just like one little thing. And if you can isolate one thing to improve, this is another tip I would say, when you're trying to focus on something that you want to improve when you're shooting, focus on one thing at a time. Take one variable and say, I'm going to just focus on this, because it's so easy to get analysis paralysis, and get so sucked into the multitude of things that can make a scene or a sequence better or worse, the different things with the lighting, and like there's so many different elements. And when you watch stuff, one of the channels I would highly recommend, and I have to watch some of Simon's videos, it's DSLR Guide with Simon Cade. He's a fellow from England, young fellow, just super simple. His videos are the perfect balance between tutorial and relational content where you feel like you know him, and he's like the most humble sounding. I mean, he might not be in real life, but he certainly does come across as just the nicest guy. Like, you just want to be friends with him. And he gives such good information so simply. Just love DSLR Guide. Awesome videos and wonderful. And you know, those give some really good pointers on how to, you know, some of the technical stuff, and even in terms of the storytelling. But one of the things that I found, having watched a lot of those videos, and you see something, you're like, oh, this is a new technique, I want to try this. Or you watch a, you know, Peter McKinnon vlog or a Casey Neistat vlog, or somebody that's got higher production value than most of my recent vlogs have been, where it's just a talking head, right? And you say, oh, that's cool, I like that, I want to do that. And it's important to limit your variables. So if there's something that you're trying to improve, focus on that one thing. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. Like sometimes little things, like just not shaking the camera, you know, putting the camera down, taking an extra 5 seconds to set up the shot, put the camera down, or put it on top of something so you get the right angle. and having a still shot instead of just being like, I'm going to hold the camera out over here and hope, you know, spray and pray type of thing. And then you always have those little jitters, the little moves, those little things. You stack all of those things up. That turns into, you know, these kind of like ugly things that ruin your shots. And you're like, oh yeah, my video doesn't look as good as, you know, theirs. And a lot of times it's fundamentals. It's very little simple things. Yeah, it gets a little bit crazy. So the other thing that might be useful, and I don't know exactly what the Karma is. Is that a gimbal? Is that like a gimbal for the GoPro? If it is, I'd really be interested to hear how you like that, because I know that there are some fairly cheap gimbals that are available for GoPros. And as much as I hate GoPros personally, I almost want to get a GoPro just so I can get a gimbal that's that cheap so that I can have a camera with a gimbal, because gimbals are awesome. You can do really cool stuff with them. Okay, sweet. So yeah, that's actually really exciting. So I'm curious to see what you do with that. But again, find people whose work you like and try to copy it. Maybe not the exact same, but like the techniques. Look for techniques and try to copy techniques. And what happens is you spend a certain amount of time, and I'm still in this process myself, so I'm not saying this as like a sage of filmmaking, but I have been attempting to make films and copy various techniques for about 5 years, which maybe I should be further along. Maybe that means I suck. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But it started with, this is a technique that I like. I want to build a story around this technique. And then you do that, and you get that technique to the point where it's fairly straightforward. You understand it from a shooting side. So it's like, okay, if I want to do this type of transition, I need to do this with my camera, like the, you know, the slide transitions or the wipe transitions where you have somebody walking through the screen, and then, you know, you mask out, and there's videos here that I would not even, I'm not going to try to explain how to do it on like Final Cut Pro X or on After Effects, or there's a variety of different ways you can do it. But you know, those really cool where the guy walks through the scene and then that like is the transition, like you incorporate those elements. And there's some really simple stuff that you can do, but like you have to understand it from a shooting side and then understand it from an editing side. And then once you really have the technique down, then it's kind of in your database, and then you don't have to think so hard afterwards. It might take you a month to get that technique really nailed down, but then it's like in your lexicon. And then when you go out to tell any other story, that's just something that you can draw on very spontaneously. You're not thinking, oh, like, okay, hang on a second, what am I going to do here? You know, and again, this comes from volume of shooting, volume of, and that's why daily vlogging, again, it's so handy, so helpful, because it's really hard to get that much volume. Yeah, practice is a huge thing. Like, people want perfect to make perfect, and they want time and effort to make perfect, but practice makes perfect. King Yuzi's point, there are very rarely new techniques. Most are things that have been done before, but with some kind of innovation you have added yourself. Very true. There is only so much new stuff that's out there, but I think it's the innovation a lot of times comes from combinations that you add, or like a part of one technique that you can put into another technique. But fundamentals, like the fundamentals, the very simple things without getting fancy, you nail that stuff down first. And a lot of times it's just as simple as, number one, good lighting, smooth camera movement or no camera movement, and so it's a still shot, and variety of angles that really convey different feelings and different senses. A lot of it is very simple stuff. Because if you think about it this way, like, you've probably seen travel videos tend to be a big culprit for this, possibly even some of my own, although my own travel videos don't really rely on flashy techniques. But the Watchtower of Turkey, some people have criticized that. Personally, I love Watchtower of Turkey. I think it's a spectacle. It's just beautiful to me. Some people hate on it and they're like, oh, it's so terrible. But like Alessandro de something, something Italian. Sorry, nothing against Italians or people of that heritage, but I can't remember his last name. It's something Italian. I think maybe Portuguese. But But anyways, it's just this amazing video, but it's mostly just techniques, and that kind of gave rise to, or inspired or fueled, the genre of the travel video, where there's not really any specific story. It's just people in a place shooting a bunch of stuff using aesthetically pleasing techniques, but not really telling a story. Just like, I can make this thing that looks cool. Kind of like star trails and time lapses of the stars were when I was like 5 or 6 years ago. That was the thing that got me into shooting videos. Like, ooh, that Milky Way time lapse video, that looks bitchin'. I want to be able to do that. And after a while, you realize it's just about, can you afford a slider and can you afford a full frame camera at that time? The Sony A7S II or whatever was not out, with their, like, you know, 150,000 ISO, zero noise and everything. Like, at that time, it was like fast glass and big sensors. Can you afford it? And then, like, pretty much anybody can do that stuff. But at the same time, a lot of it, you know, looking at that technique and saying that's something that I want to have, that I want to be able to incorporate, is a good place to start. But ultimately, the fundamentals, like, you can see people who use really flashy techniques and things that you're like, whoa, how the hell did they do that? But that still, like, aren't really telling a story, and they're not making something compelling. And to me, I think the idea of whether or not somebody's telling a really good story is, how many times would you elect to watch that thing? Is there enough meat on the bone where you would go back and look at that a second time, or where you would share it with someone else and be like, dude, you got to see this? Not saying that everybody needs to, or even that I aim for that every time I'm doing something. A lot of times it's like, yeah, this is disposable content, right? Like, I'm making something because, you know, like these live streams, I don't expect you guys here with me to, like, come back and watch these, right? But so the bottom line is that flashy techniques are, I was going to say necessary, but not sufficient. And I don't think that that's true. They're not even necessary. If you look at, there's a channel, and let me find this channel here for you. I want to, I think it's called Channel Chriswell. Yes, Channel Chriswell or Chriswell is the name of the channel, and it has videos about just like dissecting storytelling techniques from existing films that you're and directors and filmmakers that you're familiar with. And there's one where they look at the different filmmaking techniques of what is his name? The Japanese filmmaker who made Seven Samurai, and he has one about color in storytelling, composition in storytelling, and it's all using extant movies that we would all probably be familiar with. And it just does a really good job of breaking down simple techniques techniques and fundamentals that are often overlooked and that are easily overlooked for the gimbal moves and like some of the stuff that's like just crazy. And I'm not taking anything away from, you know, guys like Brandon Lee, you know, and some of those, you know, filmmakers with the drone shots and the gimbals and like using new technology to tell stories in new ways. Like, that's amazing, and it's brilliant, beautiful stuff. But I think that it's very easy to get sucked away from that. Yes, Kurosawa, thank you. Akira Kurosawa, thank you, King Yuzi. I think it's easy to rely on that stuff rather than really develop the discipline of building fundamentals and studying fundamentals. So, the Shooting Range TV. Hi, Steven. I came across your channel about an hour ago. Your videos I've watched are very good and very helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Always happy to be helpful to folks out there on the YouTube. That actually does mean a great deal to me, because a lot of times I make videos, I'm like, is anybody really going to care about this, or is this just, you know, something for me to do, something to keep the YouTube algorithm satisfied? So it always means a lot to me when I can help people make a decision about a camera, commiserate about some element of the creative stuff that we are all drawn to or what have you. So hey, Daniel Cruddy, good to see you here. I think we met recently in one of my videos, one of my quitting pro photography videos. What camera are you using now, keeping as you change your career path? I'm currently using the Fuji X-T20, and I've been weighing whether full frame is really necessary for a hobby camera. So, oh man, I love those kind of questions. Those are loaded. I can talk about that for like 3 hours, although I'm not gonna, because I'm still gonna have to go downstairs and eat dinner at some point tonight. The cameras that I'm keeping, so as long as I can pay, and I know this is terrible, but as long as I can pay the minimum on my credit card, I am going to keep both the GH5. I'm going to keep all my cameras. You know, in the past, I've sold camera stuff, and then I've regretted it and gone back out and rebought it. And the truth is, like, I love the camera gear that I have, and if I can afford to keep it, I am going to keep it. And probably what I will do, you know, if I have to choose one camera setup, what I probably would go with is I would keep the X100T, which I haven't talked about that camera a lot, but the X100T, let me get it so I can brandish it about as I'm speaking. Always makes me feel better and like I'm being more thorough. I love this camera. I talked about this one of the last live streams that I did because it's always handy, and that's why I love it. Like, I love the X-T2. It is an amazing camera. I had the X-T10, and Daniel, the X-T20, I'm sure, is a phenomenal camera. Frankly, when I saw the X-T20 and compared it to the X-T2, I was kind of like, I wonder if the extra couple $100 for the X-T2 was really worth it for what you're getting. And I forget, does the X-T20 have weather sealing? I expected it. I think it does have weather sealing, doesn't it? Maybe somebody can fill me in on that. No weather sealing. Okay. Fair enough. And for me, like the outdoor photography that I like, the weather sealing does make me feel warm and fuzzy. However, the lens that is the most useful to me right now is the 18-55, and I'm going to do a video all about Fuji lenses that I use with the X-T2, the ones that I prefer and why, and my experience with them, and then also same thing with the GH5, just for you guys who might be interested in that stuff. And I'm always interested in taking suggestions for videos, things that you would like me to delve into further, whether it's technical or creative or personal or whatever. So always feel free to post that stuff up in the comments or send me a message or what have you, just as an aside. But as much as I love the X-T2, the X100T is like the focal length that I love. I love the 35mm. It's always small. It's always handy. Because it's lower profile. I mean, I have the little, oh, what the hell is this thing called? Seriously? I can't remember what this thing is called. But this, you know, when you take this off, and I even have like an adapter on here. No, I don't have an adapter. That's the size of the lens. I'm sorry. The lens hood. Man, sorry. It's been a long week. With the lens hood off of here, this thing will go in a jacket pocket. It won't go in pants pocket, obviously, unless you're wearing like Jenko jeans from the 90s, if you're a 90s child. But yeah, it's low enough profile, it's small enough that it'll fit in a jacket pocket, which makes it really, really awesome. The X-T2, even like the smallest lenses, the 35 and the 23, which are 35mm and 50mm focal length equivalents, the X-T2 isn't going to fit in your jacket pocket without making it look like, you know, you're happy to see somebody. And so it's not as easy as a carry-around camera. And the X100T, especially since I got, you know, like the little grip, and you know, you got the thumb catch on this, it's so easy to carry this around. And this gives me a very, very close. I mean, again, the autofocus is a little bit slower, but I've done some night photography and some landscape stuff comparing the X100T with the X-T2. And yeah, the image, I mean, this is 16, I think 16 megapixel, that's a 24, so you get a little extra real estate. But like when you do, like I did some night shots where I just compared at the same ISO, the same like 23mm focal length, same f-stop, all of that stuff, and like looked at like which camera had more detail? Was there any, and like zoomed into 100%, I couldn't tell any difference between the X100T and the XT2 on a night shot at like moderate ISO. So to my mind, if I have to get rid of any one camera, it would probably be the XT2 body. I will keep the lenses as long as I possibly can because, as you may have heard, Fuji has been discussing the possibility that they may be able to get IBIS, in-body image stabilization, and I don't know what type of. This is an off-brand, I think, leather case. This isn't the. It was fairly cheap. I know that. Sorry, I couldn't be more help there. I don't know. You might be right, but I don't know what the brand is. It's kind of a no off-brand leather thing that I got off of Amazon, but it helps immensely because trying to hold onto one of these cameras without like a little extra something in the grip and the thumb catch is just a nightmare. But I would probably get rid of the XT2 body and try to keep at least one or two of the lenses so that if and when the next series of the XT2 or X Pro 2 comes out with in-body image stabilization of the sensor, that I could still potentially go get back into that system without having to rebuy all of the glass. So that is something that I've thought about doing, and then I would just hold on to the lenses for a while and then keep the X100T because this camera, again, it gets me where it goes where I want to go. It's not weatherproof. You can't change the lenses. It lacks some of the flash and the luster of the XT2, but frankly, it still gives me that Fuji experience that I know and that I love. And you know, I've shot professional work on this, like some documentary projects just on the X100T, and yeah, it definitely has its limitations. But it's so small and so easy to work with. Like I love this camera so much. And if I had to do over again, there's part of me that thinks maybe I should have gotten the X100F and just called it a day, and just gotten rid of the T or something like that. The GH5, just dollars for donuts, though. If I could only, like a desert island scenario, I mean, the truth is that I've been skating by on very low income for a while, and so I'm able to maintain the cameras that I have without getting rid of them at this point, which is my plan moving forward as much as I possibly can. The XT2 body will be the first to go, followed by some of the XT2 lenses, followed by my full frame setup, my Nikon D600, and I have a lens for that, the what is it, 105 f2 portrait lens, which is just magnificent. It's so good, but the problem is I never shoot portrait stuff that requires 105mm f2 lens, so you know, it's not that useful to me, and ultimately that's going to be the deciding factor. So I have a few cameras that I can kind of clear out of the way if I get to the point of cannibalizing my gear. But if I could, desert island scenario, GH5, hands down GH5 for desert island scenario, because even like low or high ISO shots, if you can keep the shutter open a little bit longer and you don't have to, you know, if you're shooting static subjects, the in-body image stabilization of the GH5 enables you to get comparable quality. Not the same, like, yes, you can see there is more grain at the higher ISO, but if you can leave the shutter open a little longer to keep the ISO down, you can get comparable quality. So it's, my point is, you can achieve comparable results with the GH5 as with the XT2 in many situations. Not all situations, but in many situations you can, and that fact is enough. And even in the situation where you got to bump the ISO up to like 800, yeah, trading the old gear for a gimbal and slider. If I wind up stumbling into video work and this kind of works out, I may do that. Of course, I may want to get a drone too. So if that video work comes my way, I might need to get a drone for it. But the GH5, even at the higher ISO shots, like 800, 1000, even 1600, like if you're viewing it on a small screen, like for a lot of social media stuff, which everything is digital now, you know, like, it's beautiful. You know, on a small screen, like, you'd never look at it and be like, oh, that's terrible. I mean, even looking at it on a laptop, you know, like, there were some in the video that I just did, the GH5 versus the XT2 for wedding photography. At the very end of that, I compare same shot, same background, same lighting, same time, obviously different settings, but I don't think I remember the settings, and I didn't list them in the video, but just to show that I could make a portrait that looked about the same with both cameras. The 105 Nikon lens that I have, yeah, it's 105 f2. I think it's f2 flat. That's the portrait lens that I have with my full frame Nikon D600. Beautiful, beautiful lens. It's the one that has like the defocus thing, so you can do like the glamour shot effect, which is completely useless, because if you wanted to do that, you'd be much better off doing that, I think, in Photoshop. But yeah, it's a pretty sexy lens. It's real nice. I just don't get to use it that much because it's just a pain to lug it around, and it doesn't fit in with everything else. That I'm lazy is the translation. That's the reason why I don't use it that much. I'm lazy. So yeah, all that to say that, you know, the more general a camera is and the more things it can do, the fewer individual things it will do with brilliant standalone excellence. But the GH5 for I love the Fuji cameras. I love them. There's something about like just the Fuji experience. Like, you hear people talk about that. I've talked about that. It's a thing. Like, I love the Fuji experience, and I don't get that same experience when shooting on the GH5. However, when it comes to being able to do the most amount of stuff with one single package, the GH5 is really, really, really hard to argue with. In other words, I think that the GH5 can shoot stills better than the Fuji X-T2 can shoot video. Because there are more and better ways to work around the shortcomings of the low light failures of the GH5 in stills, just using your own wits and your hands without any extra equipment, then you can work around the shortcomings of the XT2 in video. So kind of like comparing the weak spot of the GH5, right, with the weak spot of the XT2. The GH5 slaughters the XT2 in video. I'm sorry. I love the Fuji colors and the simulations, and I think that the recording limits, and like, it's been so long, frankly, since I've shot video on the XT2 and like thought about it, that I almost forget some of the stuff. I know they added in the histogram, which was really nice, very handy. But there's the major crop, there's the recording limits. The batteries, too, is another thing, which is not the most technologically advanced thing ever. It's not like, you know, drone technology, but the GH5, you could shoot for, you know, you have one battery in the camera and a backup, and you're good to shoot for a whole day with that. Stills and video, and like, the way the batteries last is such a big thing. The in-body image stabilization is huge. The ergonomics and the touchscreen too, and the slow-mo, certainly. Speed booster on the GH5, that is something that I hate speed boosters, because I just, like, especially if I'm shooting, I mean, you're not wrong about that. I'm just saying I hate speed boosters, because if I'm shooting only video, it's fine, but very rarely am I only shooting video and not shooting some stills, because I feel gypped if I don't get to take some stills, because I'm like, oh, this video is looking good, but what could I do if I had, if I had some stills to go along with this? And so, not having the autofocus with the speed boosters, that's problematic. Although I really, really, really want to get the Nocticron. Is that what it's called? The Nocticron, the like f.95 lens, a 35mm for the GH5. I've heard and seen some really spectacular things with that, and that's pretty darn fast. And the nice thing is, because it's got a smaller sensor, like the level of the depth of field wouldn't be nearly as razor thin as it would be on a, the equivalent f stoppage on a larger sensor. So it's nice. You get kind of the best of both worlds. Steve M says, I use the Nikon mount Zhongyi Turbo 2 on the Fujis, and it's impressive for the price tag. Metabones, yeah, Metabones let you use autofocus, but for the price of a Metabones, like, the autofocus still isn't as fast, and it's just, I mean, I know, I'm like, Metabones are not cheap, and they're kind of, from what I have heard the last time I looked at them when it comes to autofocus stuff. So I would rather, unless I absolutely, I mean, if I absolutely had to, I certainly could use a Metabones. But, back to this sort of video comparison between the XT2 and the GH5, in addition to all the frame rates and all the rest of the stuff, just the ergonomics and the handling of the camera, having the touch screen, like being able to use auto or manual focus, but using kind of that hybrid manual focus where you're using the touch screen to select and lock onto focus points, where you're using manual focus so you don't have the breathing and the wandering and like somebody walks through the shot and messes it up type of thing. But you have the fluidity of autofocus because you can just use your finger to touch, and that's just an amazing thing to have. So I've gotten a lot of flack from the Fuji crowd for bagging on their video side, and like, I don't hate on Fuji. I still think that, like the Rhythm of Oman, that travel video that I made with the Fuji XT2, that's one of my favorite videos, and like, when it's good, it's beautiful. But and also not having the log footage is in the Fuji without the grip is another thing too. The margin for error with that lens is 0 with the f.95. You're probably right. Haven't used that lens personally. I did have a speed booster at one time. I might go back down that route at some point. But frankly, the thing, I guess the point that I want to get at is with all this is to say that, like, just using my only fast lenses are two little primes, Olympus primes, the 25mm f1.8 and the 45 f1.8. Super happy with those. I'm sure that a speed booster could improve some things for me, could make it even better. Totally open to that. However, just with three lenses, I got the 12-35 for most of my video, and then for non-human, like non-portraiture photography, the 12-35 is an awesome lens, but if you're shooting people, just kind of the skin tones look a little funny, not great. The Olympus primes, the 25 and the 45, it's like a 50mm and a 90mm equivalent. Haven't tried any vintage manual lenses yet either. I mean, I haven't gotten all of my budget ran out after I bought the GH5, and then I was like, okay, I have to buy some faster primes to give it a fair shot when I talk about it. So that's where I got the Olympus, and since the two little Olympus primes, and since I've done that, I haven't invested any more into glass. But I anticipate keeping the GH5 and possibly even beyond the advent of, the GH6 or whatever the next thing in their series is. So, King Yuzi, when you're talking about vintage manual lenses, you're talking about manual lenses that would be adapted via a speed booster. How would they mount? Because I've heard people talk a lot about that, but just haven't done a whole bunch or tried a whole bunch of that stuff myself. But I guess my point where I was going with all this was just to say that even with the 12-35 for most of my video, and the 25 and 45 f1.8, which are both cheap. I think it's like about $600 for both of those little primes that are fast. And, I have not run into many things that I feel really limited in my ability to shoot. That would be my my synopsis there. So anyways, guys, my daughter just woke up, and so rather than try to run out there and put her back to sleep. I am going to conclude this live stream at this point, an hour deep. And folks, I really appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you did. Go ahead and subscribe. Every Friday night around 8 p.m. I come on for an hour to do amateur hour. And I look forward to these conversations, although the reality is that sometimes the baby wakes up while I'm doing this stuff, and I have to kind of split and check in with that. Anyways, guys, leave your comments, please. Subscribe to the channel. And next week, 8:30, 9 o'clock, somewhere around there, I'll be back on here talking about photography, video, cameras, telling your story, and getting after it, not for profit as much as for pleasure and the joy that comes from telling our story. So anyways, guys, thank you all so much. Again, really do appreciate you guys taking the time to tune in. The questions were awesome, and I love doing this. We'll see you guys next week, and we'll actually see you on Tuesday for the Panasonic G7 giveaway. Video is going to be going live on Tuesday. So all right, guys, take care. We'll see you then.